Hey guys, this is Andrew Weber. I'm the owner and operator of MyCreditCounselor.net, and I'm a certified student loan counselor and a certified credit counselor as well. Today I'd like to talk about Discover student loans and some of the recent changes that have taken place with Discover that are affecting a lot of people, especially people that are in default on their Discover private student loans. So to give you a little bit of background, I've settled a decent amount of Discover private student loans. We don't see a ton of them. They've got pretty low default rates. But over the years, I've definitely gotten some experience settling them with outside collection agencies, with their internal collection department in Utah, which, by the way, has some of the nicest people you're ever going to talk to in the private student loan collection business. But they're some of the most ruthless negotiators and most difficult negotiators you'll ever come across, but extremely polite and really a pleasure to talk to until they shut down any plan that you had of paying off your loan for less than the full balance. So with Discover private student loans, I used to settle them for around usually about 50%, and it would take a while. It would take some serious negotiating and a lot of effort to get them down to that. Again, they were very tough negotiators, especially in their internal collection department in Salt Lake City, Utah. Despite how polite and nice they were to talk to, very, very difficult to negotiate with, as I had mentioned. But we would still end up with settlements. We'd get 50%, sometimes maybe 55%. The lowest one that I've done was, I think it was around 40 or 41%, but that was kind of a fluke, and I'll get to that in a second. So they were settling, basically. They were taking settlements. It was a lot of effort, a lot of negotiation, but settlements were taking place. What we've seen, and I would say pretty much the last 2 years now, starting in early 2017, is that Discover seems to have adopted this hardball approach across the board where they're not taking settlements below 80%. Maybe they'll go down to 70%, but usually they're going to hold out at 80%. And I negotiated on some of our accounts for clients for a year and a half, 2 years, where it's going to a collection agency, it's going back to the internal collection department at Discover, and it's 80% across the board, regardless. There's no give, there's nothing that's happening where we wait them out long enough, which we will take that strategy with other lenders, and it's very effective, more long-term settlement strategy. So I started to notice, this was over 3 or 4 different accounts, that I'm seeing the same exact kind of feedback from Discover, no matter what type of agency the account was with. So I started to notice that, okay, Discover is doing something across the board that's very different than what they've done in the past. They're taking a hardball approach. We've even seen the assignment of some Discover accounts to collection attorneys licensed in the client's or the borrower's state, which before I didn't really see that too often. We're starting to see that more. I actually spoke with the director of a national law firm that specializes in private student loan lawsuit defense. And she told me they're seeing the exact same thing from Discover. They're not getting below 80% on settlements, and they're not taking on clients just to settle anymore. They're still defending the lawsuits. But even if Discover sues you, the best you're going to get is 80% or a payment plan. And you've got to have some good legal backup to make sure they don't get a judgment against you. So prior to that, they're still hardballing at 80%, and they'll do that for years. When they will stop doing that is when Discover thinks that the loans are past the statutes of limitation in your state. So I don't know how they calculate this. They have something internally where they've got some kind of a flag in their computer system that says, hey, this loan is past the statutes of limitation. And they'll even tell you over the phone, this loan is past statute, and we have to inform you of that. So it's kind of nice that they do that. And going back to the other settlement that I talked about, where I believe it was 41% for a client of mine. This was a very interesting situation because they thought his loan was past the statutes of limitation in his state. Turns out that it wasn't. So I negotiated with them. I got a great settlement. We're executing the settlement, and I'm on the phone with the client. And the client, really good guy, one of my favorite clients that I've had in the recent past. He asked them, by the way, what's the charge-off date on this? So the rep puts us on hold for quite a long period of time, And she comes back and says, well, we had thought that this was charged off or defaulted much earlier than it was, and we see that it's actually not past the statutes of limitation. However, we're going to honor the offer because we already made it. So me and the client both breathed a sigh of relief at that point. But that did tell me that, okay, they're still going to take a good settlement, but it's got to be past the statutes. And I'm not a lawyer. I can't determine when that is. There are many state laws and regulations that can affect that. It's different in every state. And you've got to talk to a licensed student loan attorney in your state to figure out exactly if you are past SOL or not. You might get some indicators from the lender, regardless of if it's Discover or Navient or NCT, that the loan is past SOL, but I can't make that determination. But if Discover thinks that you're past SOL based on their internal mechanisms that are telling them that, or their internal computer programs that are telling them that, then it looks like they will still settle for a pretty good amount. But keep in mind, SOL in most states is usually anywhere from 3 to 6 years or more. So you got a loan that's 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, I mean, it'd be good if they take 40% at least, or maybe not, if not lower. A lot of other lenders will go much lower than that on these older loans. But that's the only one that I've been able to get below 50% or even below 80% in my last batch of clients. And recently I had to give my Discover clients the bad news that, hey, they've changed their processes. It looks like they're becoming very aggressive. We'll still continue to try to negotiate, but here's probably our best bet. It's going to be 80% or a payment plan, maybe down to 70%. And that's not a good settlement. 70 or 80% is not a good settlement whatsoever. So this is kind of a new hardball tactic that Discover is adopting, but I don't think it's going to work for them in the long term, and here's why. If you're hardballing people at 80% of the balance for a lump sum, that's not reasonable. It's not doable for a lot of people. If they could almost pay the loan off by putting down 70 or 80% of the balance, then they probably would not be in default in the first place. So you're going to go after people that cannot pay the full balance, and if you sue them as Discover, yeah, maybe you get a judgment. Maybe you get a wage garnishment after you get the judgment, and you claw back a tiny bit of that loan over time. How many people are they going to be able to get garnishments from? Is that going to really bring in a lot of revenue on their defaulted loan portfolio? I don't think it will. So what else can a lender do when they sue you and get a judgment? What other kind of forced collections can they do? They can put a lien on a property, which in most states is only going to result in that lien being paid if the property is sold. It's pretty rare for them to do a forced sale with a lien. That's almost unheard of in the private student loan world. They can try to take money from an estate if a cosigner passes away. So never let a private student loan lender know if your cosigner has passed away. That's kind of standard procedure for the executors of an estate to call different lenders and let them know that that person's passed away. You don't want to do that for a private student loan, kind of as a side note. And then they can go for a wage garnishment. In rare cases, they can levy a bank account, but they've got to find out where you bank first, and it's pretty difficult for them to do that unless you tell them. So the easiest way for a lender to execute a judgment is through a wage garnishment. And that's, again, it's a very small, in relative terms, small percentage of someone's overall wages. It's still enough to hurt you and to make a difference and to cause hardship, but they're not going to be able to claw back 50 or 75% of your paycheck. Usually it's 25% or less, sometimes down to 15% or less, depending on state law there. So they're going to get back a little bit at a time, and that's if they can track down the person's job and if the person has a job and they're employed at the time. So a lot of people that are defaulted on their loans may not be employed, as the lender is going after them. So I think this is going to backfire on Discover. They're taking a very hardline approach, and I think it's going to result in reduced collection revenue for them. And I think eventually they're going to have to change their practices, just like they were going back to something like they were doing before 2017. But right now we're seeing Discover take a very hardline approach. We're seeing settlements at 70 to 80%, usually 80% or more, and we're seeing basically no give from them regardless of how much time has passed until you get past the point where they think you're past the statutes of limitation in your state or the state you took the loans out in, which however they calculate that, I have no idea. That's something internally with their systems that they have, which I was able to tell from one of our recent negotiations. Right now, we're not taking on Discover private student loan clients because of this, but we're continuing to monitor the situation. If it does change, which I really think it will in the future, they're going to have to give in a little bit. They're going to have to adopt some strategies and practices that are more similar to every other private student loan lender, at least every for-profit private student loan lender in the industry. Nobody else is doing that. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because you're not going to get the most collection revenue by hardballing people at 80% and trying to sue them. We'll see if my prediction plays out in the future. For right now, we're not taking on Discover student loan clients, but hopefully this video has given you a little bit more insight into how Discover is operating and how to approach a Discover private student loan if you're defaulted on one or falling behind. Again, this is Andrew Weber from mycreditcounselor.net. If you'd like to settle a private student loan that's not through Discover, give me a call today, 937-503-4680. That number again is 937-503-4680. You visit us on the web at mycreditcounselor.net and fill out an evaluation form and we'll be in touch with you.